Hello and welcome to this edition of the Ferrell Phelps Show. This is actually our first show for 2015, so I'm very excited about that. Are you guys excited about that? Yeah. We have a full house tonight as we discuss relationships. This show is all about relationships, how we act and interact in them. Now, the show was prompted by a friend of mine, Miss Tammy Thompson, who sits to my far right. Tammy and I were talking one day, and we were talking about relationships, and she said it's time for us to revisit that relationship show. I said, guess what? Let's do it. Hence, today is taking place. I also have as my guest, Norma. Norma, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And Meka. Now, all of these ladies are coming from different perspectives. Tam is a single woman, and these two ladies here are in relationships. And we are talking about how you interact in relationships, what make relationships work, and what are the deal breakers in relationships. I'm going to start with you, Tammy Thompson. Yes. You know, you and I, of course, made this thing happen as far as the show on relationships today.
Right.
What is one of your biggest concerns in the relationships that you've had in the past?
Just lack of respect and understanding what a relationship should be. Not what you want it to be. Just staying where it is and moving from there, making something out of it.
So tell me, when you say what it should be, as you define relationships, how do you define a relationship?
I think I have to always go back to the Bible and saying you have to find someone that's equally yoked with you. And I think a lot of people get it confused because they think you have to make the same money, you have to live in the same zip code. No, we have to have the same morals, the same beliefs. That is what is going to keep us together. And that's where the misconnect happens.
Because of the morals. Now, Norma, I want to ask you, speaking of the morals, when you talk about a relationship and the moral perspective of it, do you think a lot of times people walk into relationships with a, should I say, a false characterization of who they are?
Yes, they do. They do. Because a lot of times when you start dating, people will bring to the table what they think you're looking for, or based on the fact that you may tell them what you're looking for, so they'll just go with that lead. And when the relationship goes step by step and it gets a little deeper, that person that you thought was bringing that into the relationship actually don't. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I think a lot of times when people go into relationships, what you get to meet is their representative. And that representative is not always representative of who that person is and the character that they possess.
Exactly.
You know? And when we talk about character, you know, that's a whole different thing because you want somebody with decent character. You know, and Meka, I want to ask you, how do you feel about the character of the person that's in a relationship?
That's very important. I think when you're in your 20s, you know, everybody tend to find who they think they're going to be with in college. That's your 20s. I think we're still learning who we are. You change your major several times. That may be what you think you want at 21. And if you happen to get married in your early 20s, you realize that this is not. We are definitely unequally yoked, and this isn't what I was really looking for. And I come from a strong Christian background as well, and I think sometimes as Christian women, we put God in a box and we feel like we have to stay in something because it says God hates divorce, but he hates what he puts together. He hates to depart what is brought together. And I think in our 20s, we brought it together.
And that's the important. That's the important thing, that God had nothing to do with it.
It's usually us.
Exactly.
And so what you said was in your 20s, you tend to bring the relationship together yourself, as opposed to it being something that God ordains and puts together.
Right, exactly.
And so in other words, it's kind of like jumping the gun.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Before you probably should.
And I think that's 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. I think
Really?
there is no representative. If you pay attention to anybody, you cannot hide from yourself. Listen to what they say. Listen to what they don't say is more important. So nobody could fool you into thinking that they're this type of person. You listen, you watch, you understand who they are. Now, we may fool ourselves into saying, no, well, he didn't say that, or maybe I'm making too much of it, or but it's not. Go with that gut that you have. That's what God placed in us as nurturers. And understand what it is. You can't hide from yourself. You cannot.
I totally understand that. Now, Norma, when we talk about hiding from ourselves and we see people hiding from themselves in the relationship, what is one of the things that you think is hidden in relationships, especially when a person becomes married?
Wow. Believe it or not, we as married women tend to hide, we put ourselves on the back burner because we become parents, we become mothers. Okay? So once we become, especially when children become involved, when we become parents, as a mother speaking, we take self out of the picture. And when we take self out of the picture, the husbands start looking at us in a different way because now we're focused on the children and not on him. So when he's feeling like he's no longer important, then that gives him the excuse to do other things. So we have to, as women, have to know how to prioritize. Prioritize your family life so that you won't forget about who you are first of all. Okay, because we are women. We want to be respected by our husbands or just a man in general.
Right.
So when you forget who you are and you lose that respect for yourself, I guarantee you, he's going to lose respect for you.
And then, when we talk about that particular thing, and we talk about when you first get married, and then you have children, and then you end up giving attention to the children, of course, which is something that a mother will do. Finding a balance, I think, is important, and I think the timing of it is all important. Like if you know your kids go to bed at a certain time, you try to make sure that they're in bed at a certain time so that you can give your husband the attention that he might need. And then you're thinking about breakfast in the morning, you're thinking about backpacks being packed for the kids when they go to school. It's a lot of things that women have to think about. And what I find ironic, especially in today's relationships, I see a lot of men actually taking on the roles that their wives had to help the wives out. And I see a lot of the men kind of like being neglected in a way or taken for granted because they are stepping up to the plate to really help that wife out. And also, jealousy comes into play in relationships, and you see that type of thing. And a lot of times the jealousy ends up separating and dividing. One of the spouses or the other might become greater influentially or in society, and the other one might become more wealthy, and the other one might be jealous. When you're a married couple, you have to look at it as being one.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of times it's separated some kind of way where you're not on the same plane. And I think that's when it comes back to being equally yoked.
Well, yeah.
Like what you were talking about
because the core
earlier.
values is not there. I have never been to a funeral where they have a U-Haul truck behind the hearse. Never.
Exactly.
So it doesn't matter what you have because that can be gone. You see? So if we're not equally yoked with how we thinking, I have to uplift you as my man. If I'm the one that's making more money than you, then there is still some uplifting that I give you. The money is just there. It just says if we're going to McDonald's or Fogo de Chao. That's all it says. It does not take away your manhood. And there's something that women have to be, mindful of that, I think, because, money, once you start to make money or power comes in play, it's like, I don't need. And we have to, like you said, take the time to do things. And I don't think, you said something about the husband helping out their wives. You help to make that baby. There's no helping out your wife. That is also your child.
And you know what? She makes a very valid point there. But it's a teamwork thing. Teamwork makes the dream work. And there are times when one may not be able to give 75%. But the other might step in and give that 75%.
Right, and that's just for a time.
And that's just for a time. But in that period, sometimes things can be misconstrued and misunderstood. And as a result of that, it can cause friction in the relationship.
I agree.
If that makes any sense at all. Now, I want to talk about finances in the relationship. Meka, we're going to talk about that in just a second when we come back with more of the Ferrell Phelps Show. You guys stick around. We'll be back in just a moment.
Skytrue's custom eyewear has taken the world by storm. In only 8 months, Skytrue's has gained the eyes of many, including celebs like Big Sean, Little Flip, Destiny Child, Soldier Boy, just to name a few. Through custom design, Skytrues can put your imagination on your frames. I bring to you the next big thing in Houston, Skytrues, created by Golden Boy, the musician, the artist, the entrepreneur, and grassroots marketing genius. Be inspired. Skytrues, custom designed frames. Skytrues!
All right, welcome back to this edition of the Ferrell Phelps Show. We're talking about relationships. And man, you know what? This show is getting hot, just like I thought it would be, because we're talking about relationships. Now, we were talking about balance. How important is balance in the relationship, in the marriage?
It's real important. Like I said, women should not lose their self. You know, we talked about taking on the last name of a man, and that's true, but it also says that a man has to learn to understand his wife. You know, women have so many different emotions and so many different roles. You know, God actually never told us to understand a man. That's pretty easy.
Or love.
Women, yeah.
Or love.
But far as a man learning to understand his wife, when you can understand the woman that God has placed as your helpmate, that alone strengthens that marriage. But if that understanding never takes place, it's just toxic. And it's just like a ripple effect. It keeps going on and on. And the balance, when you become a mother, you have to balance it. If you are financially strapped, get creative. You know, and I think that is something that kind of suffered with us being a younger couple and having children and not having family in Texas. You get bored. You get stagnated. You have to figure out ways. Okay, the kids go to sleep at 7. At 8 o'clock, we're gonna have movie night. We're gonna whatever it is. Keep dating each other.
Right.
Keep it hot.
Right.
You know, because
Keep
when
it
it
hot.
dies
That's
And you know, I think one of the things that take place with when you say keep it hot, I think one of the things that take place is that once kids come into play, once the kids' activities come into play, once the parent-teacher organization is calling, there's a lot of things that can take you away from your marriage. But I think if you build a good, strong, solid foundation in the beginning, then you have something to stand on.
Right.
It's just like a house. If you build a house on quicksand, it's going to sink.
Exactly.
But if you build it on a solid foundation, then it's going to last.
Right.
Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, you're right.
You know, now, when you talked about finances, I know that finances certainly play a big part in relationships. And I've actually heard women say, I won't date this particular man or that particular man because his income is not what I need it to be. But he might be a good man. And I think a lot of times, and I don't want to say a particular race or ethnicity, but I've heard it commonly said that if he doesn't make this amount of money, then I don't want him. Or if he might be a garbage truck driver, I don't want him. But if it's a good man, and so often women say, I want a good man. Well, a good man don't always equal a six-figure income. But he might be a good man
But
to you.
that's not the man's problem. That's her problem. She's not looking for a good man. She's looking for a good lady.
Just
She's
looking
looking
for
for
somebody
a good-
to take care of her.
Exactly.
But aren't most women?
No.
Really?
No. When you meet a man, I know nobody meets a man and they're just naked and destitute and saying, please pick me. When you go on a date, you fully look like you're attracted to me because I could take care of myself. That has nothing to do with, you know,
Okay, so what
what
you're
a good
saying?
man is.
So what you're saying to me is that finances don't matter in a dating situation.
No.
Or it does not matter.
Not in
It's
a dating
important.
situation.
It's just not that it really matters, but it's important. You know, I don't want to just come to the table and I'm making six figures and you're not making anything, but it depends on what he's bringing to the table. It doesn't have to be six figure, but at least be doing something. Even if he's in school trying to make something of his life. At least I know he's trying to get to the next level.
Right.
But if you come to the table and don't have nothing to bring, nothing to show, you done been here, been there, and you still don't have nothing to show for it. Come on.
But,
now
but
that-
here's the thing. What if he never gets to the six figure?
I'm
But
not
he
worried
is-
about him getting to
but
the
that's-
six figure. I just want him to be able to provide.
Right. Oh yeah, definitely. He should be able to provide, but he's mentioning six figures. To me, on the dating, it doesn't matter.
But the purpose of dating is to go to another step. You don't just date just to date. You date looking for somebody that you can potentially be with.
Right. So you're paying attention.
So you're paying attention. But you know what? The money that say for instance, roles could be reversed. So the woman might be making six figures when she's first in the marriage, and the man might be making $30,000 a year. but the man knows how to use that money wisely,
Right.
being the head of the house. So yes, the woman might come in with a 6-figure income, but if this man is wise and knows how to put money in different places that they are making as a family, because it's a union, right?
Her money is her money. I'm so sorry. I'm not going to union that.
And at that point, I think that's because we're taking it biblically.
Now, let me say this. I'm not saying if your household needs something and the man, the king of the house, let's say your husband, cannot do it with the means that he has. And if I have it, you understand? I'm not saying we don't take, it's our house. What I am saying is he's not supposed to make decision based on what I am bringing to the table. That's what I'm saying. He's supposed to, you find a wife. You find a wife. I'm not running looking for you. You find a wife. So when you find a wife, you know we're going to live in this zip code. My kids is going to go to this school. My wife is going to drive this. You already have in your mind how your family is going to be set up and what you can do for your family. You're not saying, I have to date a woman that's just out of college. She got to be a lawyer. She got to be a doctor, because now you're not a man. To me, I'm so old school, and that's what I think is lost today. And that's why a lot of relationships suffer, in my opinion.
I think they suffer first and foremost when you said about finding a wife. That's the problem. A lot of women go out and look for their husbands, and that's the reason why the marriages don't last. So therefore, if you let that man find you, and a man that finds a wife finds a good thing. If he finds a good thing, no matter what she makes, she gonna bring it to the table, even if it is hers, because she wants that foundation to be solid. And in order for that foundation to be solid, they got to work as one. You can't work as two separate people.
Right, but don't depend on her money. That's what I'm saying.
And that's not, I don't think that's what he was saying. He was just saying that if he wanted to make sure that the investments, in order for your home to prosper, if he have to use his wife's money and she don't have a problem with it, then that's the only way that you can make proper investments in order for you to prosper, whether it's in investments for business, investments in your church, your kids, or whatever. You have to bring it all to the table. Sit at the table, bring it to the table, put it on the table, and talk about it. You can't just go to sleep and think about, oh, I wonder if I ask, or I wonder if I do. You can't do that. If you don't bring it to the table and communicate about it, hey, you can. A closed mouth don't get fed. I'm just leave it like that.
And you bring up a very good point, because communication is very important, and we have to know, and we have to learn how to effectively communicate, and we have to communicate in truth. And a lot of times we don't communicate in truth, and then that's when problems come into the situation and the circumstance, because what we're saying is a lie, and we have to be honest. How important is integrity? I'll ask you, Meka. I changed that. How important is integrity?
It's very important. I don't think that when a person first meets that they show their true self. I think that you're going to put on a front, all of us do, and then that true self. I think women can be more a little direct, this is what you get, and then once the relationship, men are going to try to adapt, and not all, you have some are going to try to adapt because they're going after, and they're going to do whatever they can to get it, and then it comes out to be a disaster because it wasn't truly them. I want to go back on the finance thing just briefly, because I was brought up where I definitely didn't. I had my own, full scholarship, so on and so forth. So money wasn't a big issue. I wanted love. I had an absentee dad. Now, if I knew what I knew then, a lot of things would be different. I'm still not for money, but I think it's very important to know what debt each other is bringing into.
Oh, yeah, man.
Because so I'm always careful when I say that, but it's very important. Now, I'm like 20, you're just in love, you know. Now it's like that's one of the leading causes of divorce, because you're bringing in so much debt, and you're saying we come as our individuals, and I feel like I've worked so hard for something, you work, but now I'm taking on debt, and we may be taking this on for the rest of our life, but I didn't have so much debt until marriage. So it's important to go to marriage counseling. I know I'm old school too. Normally pastors don't marry you unless you have the counseling. I wish we would have went, because I've heard Joel Olsen say a lot of times after a lot of people decide we're going to stay friends, but the marriage thing, because when you really learn your role and learn that person, sometimes it's better off just being friends.
Once you learn that it's better off just being friends. You have to accept that
Right.
it's better off just being friends.
Exactly.
You know, and a lot of times we want to step over that boundary.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You know, I am enjoying this show so much I don't even want to stop. I just want to keep on going and going and going. But you know what? We got to wrap it up for a hot minute. But we're going to be back in just a moment, and we're going to take a few questions from our audience. All right, stick around. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, welcome back to this edition of the Ferrell Phelps Show. Thanks to everybody for showing up tonight. Thank you so much. Now, for those of you that may have just joined us, we're talking about relationships, and this show has really gotten heated as the women certainly speak their minds on this forum. Now, I want to talk to you, Meka, for a second. You are a former Olympian, and you were working with around a lot of males and that type of, a lot of males in the industry. Mm-hmm. Was your relationships ever affected by that industry and being around?
Not really. When I was in a relationship, that was my relationship. I never really got swayed to step out or anything. You know, my morals were pretty strong. What I realized is that I'm a type A. I'm a driver.
Okay.
You give me a goal, I'm gonna go for it. And unequally yoked sometimes can be personalities too. For a person like me, I have to have almost an equal, because even retiring from track, I have to put that energy somewhere. And if I have a passive person, it's not that they're bad, but we're going to clash. And that's what I've tend to run into. A lot of times when marriages fail, you're not bad people, you're just different. It's sad that divorce has to be so ugly. I've always said, you know, we can rewrite that. You know, just realize that it just didn't work. You know, when kids are involved, let them know, you know, that both parents are going to love you. We're going to go different ways. So my problem was being a type A personality and not my partner embracing that strength that God gave me, taking it as intimidation. And it was never meant that way. You know, I write programs for Star of Hope 7 years. I have one of the biggest hearts, and actually one of the humblest athletes. I very seldom talk about my accomplishments unless I have to. But I'm a driver. I'm an only child. So I'm okay by myself, and I think finding a person that cannot be so offended by, I want to argue right now, don't throw scripture at me right now, I love Jesus, but just give me 5 minutes, and then I'm going to come back. Because that athlete, it can go either way.
Right.
It can go ugly.
Full speed.
Yeah, because I feel like I'm in a competition right now. So being able to give me that space and embracing, sometimes men get intimidated by strong women, and sometimes culturally, African American women, that's looked at as a negative, but it's actually a strength when it's delivered right. Exactly. And I've always felt like God has delivered that right. So moving on, being able to get somebody that can embrace that strength and not be intimidated by it, and then that comes to where they are in their life, being very comfortable as a man.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things that you just mentioned was your delivery. And I think delivery is very important when you're having communication with a person.
Right.
How you deliver it, how you say that to me is what makes the difference. You can say it to me, I need you to do this.
Right.
I ain't good with that. Or you can gently rub me on and say, baby, can you do this for me? Oh, yeah, what you need, sweetie? It's the way you say things that makes a difference. So communication is certainly important. Now, we have tons of questions from the audience tonight. We got George Phelps. George, you got a question as well.
My question is, they say, you know, men cheat. Could an open relationship be the best relationship?
No.
You said no.
Now, hold up. Let me tell you, come back.
To each
Okay.
his own.
All right, now his question was, and we want to make sure that we stay focused on his question. His question was, is an open relationship,
Could it be a good relationship?
could it be a good relationship? So I'm going to ask you, Tammy Thompson, how do you feel about that?
Just no. It can never be good.
If it's mutually
We're
agreed
not
upon.
made like that. It doesn't take a group of people to make one child. It only takes 1, 2.
I mean, just for the dude.
Oh no.
Just for the dude. And she like women too.
It doesn't matter. It only takes 2
I'm
persons
gonna keep it real. I'm talking about today's
to
relationship.
have a
My
relationship. I'm
generation.
talking about today's relationship.
Yeah.
That's why it's just people who know each other
Okay.
and people who
And-
hook up
There it
and
is.
plug in.
Mhm.
But it has nothing to do with relationship or going further.
Okay.
Those
Yeah.
people will die alone.
Okay.
Wow. You know why? Man, who? Norma? You know, that was a very valid and good question. And I think now, I noticed that a lot of times in our dialogue on this evening, we're going back to the scripture and being biblical. And certainly what you're asking is certainly not a biblical thing. And oftentimes when you sway away from the biblical thing, you're setting yourself up for a disaster. And you know, a lot of times when you do those things, I don't care what nobody says. This is just my personal opinion. After you have sex or intercourse with someone over a period of time, now you might say that, oh, we're just having sex, we're just doing this or that. But I always feel like some type of emotional attachment happens when you start to have sex over and over again with the same person. That's just what I believe. And so to separate him, and then you begin to stake claim. So if she's saying, oh, I'm going out tomorrow night, you think, oh, somebody else hit it. I mean, jealousy comes into play if we're gonna be real about this here, and it's important that we are real about what's going on. You know, personally, I don't think the open relationship thing works. I'm jealous. I ain't good with it.
It's cause and effect.
So
I
can't do it.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
Not for the woman, just the man.
Just
And she likes the woman too.
It doesn't
So
matter.
she
It's cause
bring
and
one
effect.
every now
It
and
doesn't
then
matter.
to
It
keep the
doesn't
chemistry.
okay.
Keep it
Now, now what I will say
It
is,
doesn't matter.
if
That's not a wise man.
it's not. I don't think it's wisdom on any part, but I think if you can collectively make a decision about it as a quote unquote couple and roll with it, if y'all both on the same page, go for it.
Never
It ain't gonna work because they ain't gonna get married. They ain't gonna have children. They ain't gonna,
I see so many successful relationships like
It will
that.
never
Like they
work.
married.
Well, what I
I
think.
feel like this.
I mean,
To each his
I see
own,
some-
but no. No, it's off. It's not right, but to each his own.
Okay.
But I'm gonna tell you like this, because you said it's a question from a man, and you said the 2 women and the man and the woman. See what's gonna happen? He gonna get hurt, because in this day and time, women really do like women. So they can leave you out the equation altogether. And how you gonna deal with that?
I'm taking
Well,
like that.
You gonna
Hey,
have
take
to.
it like a man.
You gonna
You
have
know
to.
what?
So,
And I'm gonna take this like a man right now, and we're gonna cut this segment. We've had a wonderful, wonderful time with these beautiful women, Meka, Tammy, Thompson, Norma. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this edition of the Ferrell Phelps Show. It's been very interesting and very enlightening, and I'm certain that somebody out there can glean from something that you ladies have said.